So, hope number one, let's just work these together. That we would plant churches that plant churches. Another way to say that is that we would make disciples who make disciples. Here's what Acts 29 is saying with this one. There is an endless array of good and biblical things that we could set our energy and our zeal to as a part of being a team of churches, an endless array of things. But our touchdown, the thing that we are going for together, is to plant and to replant more gospel-centered churches. Okay, this hope, of course, emerges from what we call Jesus' Great Commission. It appears in different ways in different texts of Scripture. Here is how it is received by us in Matthew's Gospel. This is Jesus charging his disciples with what he wanted from them. And here's how he said it. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. Okay. The central imperative of this commission from Jesus is to go and make disciples. The minute that a church stops doing that and gets distracted by other ventures, other priorities, other hopes, other gospels, other touchdowns, it has faded from what Jesus has instituted her to be. If I asked you, what is 7 Mile Road's touchdown? That's what we're going for. What's our first and biggest hope? You should be able to say to me, to see as many Bostonians as Jesus would give us becoming holy and healthy and happy disciples of Jesus. Now, the reason that we tie these two phrases so tightly together, making disciples, planting churches, is because they are necessarily tied together. If you wanted to get ripped, right? Matt Cruz circa 1996 on my wedding day, I had some muscles. What is the context that you would go about getting ripped in? Well, it's a gym of some sort, right? Back in those days, there was like 2 gyms in the whole area. Now there's hundreds and thousands of different places. You go to a gym where there's weights and there's dangerous-looking machines and there's qualified trainers. Then there's bald dudes that are like this that are just yelling at you, come on, you baby, 2 more, 2 more. You spend time in those rhythms of gym and you find muscles building on your body, developing muscles, attending a gym. These things go and work together. That's how making disciples and planting and growing churches works. That you cannot separate these. They are necessarily tied together. Now, at first glance, this verse doesn't say anything about church planting, right? Be like, Cruz, where do you see church planting in here? I just see making disciples. Okay, hold on a second. Go and make disciples is the first and the central command. That's the clause of this text. That's our hope. After it comes some supporting clauses that describe for you what that looks like, what that feels like, how Jesus wants us to go about doing that. And what comes after the central command to make disciples? We get baptize and we get teach, obedience. Another way of saying that is to say that we get the sacraments and we get the word and we get discipline or calling people to obedience to Jesus. Now, if you were to go throw open a really fat and dusty systematic theology written by a gospel-centered, orthodox, dead saint, you would see that the true marks of the church delineated as faithful preaching of the word, faithful administering of the sacraments, and many times faithful discipline of the saints. In other words, what? Making disciples happens in the context of planting and growing churches. As we disciple people, Teach them who Jesus is, what he has done, what he requires. Care for their souls. Love them. Disciple them. Call them to confession of sin. Do these things. What happens is that happy, holy, healthy churches filled with disciples becomes the reality. This is why this whole postmodern American, I follow Jesus, but I'm not a part of any of Jesus' churches. It makes no biblical sense at all. To be a disciple of Jesus is to be under the Word, practicing the sacraments, becoming a holy person in the context of Jesus' community. These things go together. And so with this hope, we are saying, can we please not fade from the central mission that Jesus has given to us? Let's be single-minded about making disciples and planting churches to make more disciples. All right, so 2 questions for you on that this year. Number 1, how are you being discipled? How are you being discipled with us this year? This is one spot every Lord's Day of your life, given all the complications of vacations and tragedies and stuff like that. You should be finding a way to be in worship with the saints, under Word, around Jesus' table, to be built up by your pastors, by your friends, your brothers and sisters. You're being discipled right now, just listening and engaging and hearing. We do gospel communities in the life of this church, smaller groups of 7-milers who get together for word and prayer and soul care and mission. We are making disciples of each other in that setting. Rob and Doug and Jeremy have done a beautiful job of discipling me as we've hung out after the last couple of years. We have something called tracks. These are year-long discipleship communities. So for example, if you're a woman and you want to live out your femininity to the glory of God as a woman created in his image, we've got a track for that this year that's going to meet monthly on Friday nights where you can be discipled. If you're a mom and God has graced you to be raising sons and daughters to know him, we've got a community that meets here during the week to make disciples of our moms. If the Bible is brand spanking new to you and you go, what do I do with this thing? We've got a theology track where you can spend a year wrestling with the teachings of Scripture, becoming a disciple of Jesus. Whatever it is, how are you being discipled this year? But not only that, who are you making a disciple of? The beautiful thing about the Church of Jesus Christ is that, yes, there are officers, pastors who have responsibility to shepherd the flock, but we are a nation of priests, and we get to gospel and care for each other. I will never forget Christina Martindale worshiped with us for about a year, and then her husband whisked her off to Southern California. I was like, man, all right, it's Southern California, but man, she was in a gospel community. Jesus had brought a young girl to faith. They built a friendship, and she said to me, Matt, is it okay if I just love and disciple her this year? Like, yes, that's my hope for this church, that we would love and make disciples of each other. How are you being discipled? Who are you discipling? That's our touchdown. That's why we exist. Let's do that together.